Welcome to you today to this episode. I'm absolutely delighted to be joined by someone whose work has profoundly influenced my own journey, Mimi Kuo-Deemer. I first discovered Mimi many years ago through a YouTube video where she gently weaved in some Qigong into a warrior sequence to some music by Jess Maida. And I was so blown away by the elements of Qigong in the practice that I wanted to know more, and I was instantly captivated. However, at the time, Mimi was teaching mostly in London, and it wasn't easy for me to attend her classes as I live in North Yorkshire. But through Movement for Modern Life, I caught up with some of Mimi's practices and teachings. And then during the pandemic, I reconnected with her teachings online, and her classes were a golden gift in an isolating time and a real lifeline, not just for me, I know for many others. Since then, I've continued to learn from her through mentorships, online courses, and her books, Qigong and the Taiji Axis, and Shaolin, I hope I've said that correctly, the ancient Chinese art of self-cultivation. Her teachings have profoundly enriched my own physical and mental well-being and continue to inspire me to learn, grow, and explore how movement, meditation, and self-cultivation can bring harmony to life. For those who may not know her work, Mimi is a sixth-generation lineage holder in Baguazhang, a mindfulness training institute accredited teacher and a long-time practitioner and author. Her teaching draws deeply from Buddhist and Taoist wisdom, inviting us to transform compassion and goodwill from conceptual ideals into lived, embodied experience. She's lived a fascinating life, from growing up in the US to 14 years in China, where she worked as a documentary photographer and co-founded Beijing's first yoga center. And now she's settled in the English countryside, where she balances teaching and writing with gardening, walking, and caring for her animals. Mimi, it's a real honor to have you here today. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Kay. And just to say, it feels really lovely to sit with you in conversation. You've been on classes, on Zoom classes. You've been really touching base for so many years and so steady in your commitment to practices. And it's just really an honor to be asked to join your podcast. So thank you for that opportunity. And it's very heartwarming to hear that the practices have been so supportive to you.
Well, not just to me, actually, Mimi, because I started to introduce Qigong practices into my yoga flows. And during the pandemic, I started one specific class a week for Qigong, which has continued. So there are as many people coming to my Qigong as there are to my yoga classes. So I think it's a testament to the practice, but also to the manner in which I've been taught. So could you tell us a little bit about your journey? How did you become to yoga, Qigong, meditation, Baguazhang, all of these?
How much time do you have? I'll keep the story as short as I can. But I think I came to it, the practices of movement and meditative movement, particularly because I was struggling. I had ill health from when I was young. I had asthma, childhood asthma. I was, like many people in their 20s, very stressed, unwell, unhappy. And it was my mother who had done some yoga when she was pregnant. And she had this book from the 70s that she had a photocopied version of and gave to me when I was living in Beijing at the time. And I began to use the book and immediately felt better, just some sort of a shift. And that began, I think, just an inquiry process, an interest in recognizing that there was something that I could do. And the agency was really empowering. Over the years, as you mentioned, I did a lot of yoga. I opened the center in Beijing with my very good friend Robin in the early 2000s. And by then I decided I wanted to teach yoga. And soon after that, I had met someone who really influenced my trajectory of yoga because he incorporated a lot of martial arts, Taiji and Qigong into his sequences. He was a dancer as well, Matthew Cohen. And I had touched into Qigong when I was young, as most Chinese kids do, but my parents never pushed any of that sort of more Eastern or Chinese movement practices as sort of an orientation for us. My brothers did do martial arts when they were kids, but I didn't have that pleasure. But I had done some Qigong actually at the Shaolin Temple when I was 13 or 14 years old. And I had touched into some books that I'd read in Beijing, and I just hadn't gotten hooked the way that Matthew hooked me. And I very quickly practiced in a way that felt more energetic and more intention-based, which are kind of hallmarks of Qigong practice. I then also met someone named Cameron Tukapua, who is an acupuncturist and a very good friend of my main yoga teacher at the time, Donna Farhi. And she really opened my perspectives to nature and the 5 phases, 5 element theories. And all of that began really interweaving into my own study, my own practice. Fast forward, decades later, I'm still doing Qigong. I continued exploring it on my own. I eventually met a shifu in Beijing who began teaching me something I had no idea I would even dream of doing. I really didn't have any experience in it. It's called Baguazhang, which is an internal martial art. And I had fantasies before of somehow, somewhere starting to learn Taiji, but I wanted to learn from someone Chinese, and I wanted someone that I felt like I could grow with. I didn't get Taiji at that moment. I got Baguazhang, which is another internal martial art. My grandmother had done Taiji sword, so I was just like a childhood fantasy, and I just imagined myself one day maybe doing something like that. And then, lo and behold, this man, Liu Xuyang, came into my life. He's now the master father of my generation of Baguazhang. And I think the meeting of him was right before the pandemic. And timing was such that I had a lot of time during the pandemic to learn something new. And like everyone, I went online, and my shifu was open to teaching me via Zoom. And I fell in love with it. And it really was unlike anything I had done before. I was a little bit obsessed, I would say. I'm still a bit like that. I love the way that it makes me feel. About a year or two after I began practicing it, I asked my shifu, and at that time I hadn't done any formal transmission yet, but I asked him if I could share some of the simpler Qigong forms. And he said, of course, and I'll help you. And soon after that, he invited a number of us to do a transmission ceremony, and I did that via Zoom. And became 6th generation. And meanwhile, I did find a Taiji teacher as well. She is from China. She's in London. She came to me by way of a British person, Josh. And she's now teaching me. I've been studying with her 5 years, but she's teaching me Taiji sword. My shifu is also teaching me sword forms. I feel like I'm in a little martial arts movie, more like Kung Fu Panda sometimes, if I'm honest, bumbling along. But there's some progress, and I just feel so fortunate to learn these arts that my grandmother had done. There's something that's so resonant with me about these practices. I think in large part because they help me really embody many of the philosophies that I'm keen to understand and incorporate. And then I should also say that difficulty and health issues also led me in the direction of meditation. In 2007, I got married. My husband and I were trying to have a family, start a family. It wasn't so successful. And when we moved to London, I had a number of miscarriages. And during that time, somebody had sent me some podcasts by a Dharma practitioner, and I began listening to them. And they were just, the wisdom was in my ears always for a number of months. And then I then recognized, like, I want a teacher. And I went to Martin Aylward's retreat center in France. And within the first minute of sitting in the Dharma hall with him and hearing him speak, I knew he was a teacher, and that the teachings were medicine to me. They were very immediate, relevant, practical, but also deep and profound. That was in 2015. And so I've also been following this trajectory of Dharma teachings with Martin. And again, a few years ago, he authorized me to begin teaching Buddha Dharma and insight meditation.
And you teach, don't you, with Martin? I've seen some of your retreats offerings online. I'm sure they're absolutely amazing, completely and utterly amazing. It's so it's like a domino effect of one thing leading to the next, and then you meet these extraordinary people. It almost feels like it was meant for you. Do you feel these practices chose you, or do you?
So there's a phrase or term in Chinese called yuanfen, and sometimes this is translated as destiny or fate or serendipity. And I like this term a lot because it explains the unexplainable. Why things happen in the domino effect that they might seem to be happening, or they are just by chance that I meet someone, and often it's a term used in relationship. Like my shifu will often say, "Oh, 我们有缘分," like we have 缘分. And then maybe somebody else who wants to start studying this with me and is really gung-ho, but just something in their life intervenes and they're not able to continue. 我们没有缘分. We don't have serendipity together. And it's a beautiful term because it doesn't lay blame on any one party. It's just the situation right now. Like it either is in flow, right? And or it's not in flow. And I default to that often with my teachers, like, oh, this is just a serendipitous turn of my life that has led me to do these practices. But I also feel that in Qigong is an intention-based practice. I never do things like vision charts or think about kind of the direction of my life. In fact, I'm odd in my sort of community that way. A lot of people do use those kind of strong intention-based practices. But what I have as an intention is I really want to learn. Like I really want to study with someone who is a teacher who's walked these territories of practice of the heart, of experience, of they have the knowledge and the skill and the embodiment and the wish to transmit this, and I want to be in that stream. Right? I feel very lucky to sometimes think of the fact that I'm studying with people who have done this since they were young. If I didn't do that when I was young, I'd rather difficult kind of, I wouldn't say difficult, but just melancholy youth. I was sick a lot. I was a bit anti-establishment. I kind of was grumpy and wore a lot of black, smoked a lot of cigarettes in high school. It wasn't that like kind of story of my shifu who did martial arts since he was young. And my Tai Chi teacher, who was plucked out of school at the age of 7 or 8 and had trained then in the All China Martial Arts Federation since she was that old, and now she's 60. Or Martin, who at a young age set off into, a journey of discovery and found his way to India and sat with recluses and found, amazing teachers. And that was when he was 18, 19. And so I seek out these, or I have a longing to study with people who have a depth of knowledge and experience.
And I think it comes over so authentically when they do have that depth of knowledge, because if I think of my journey, I took up yoga properly at 61. And from there on in, I've been hooked into, mindfulness, meditation, and all of these practices. I love your expression as well about the practices being medicine, because that's definitely how they felt for me. A real inner sense of having some medicine that is a part of a toolkit that I can use to meet life's challenges. In terms of, you've spoken just briefly, about having brothers who did internal martial arts. Your family, obviously all our families shape us all. How were you affected by your family sort of setup?
Oh gosh. My parents were really unusual in that growing up, they spoke about China all the time. They traveled back to mainland China when I was young. It was 1974 and then 1975 that my mother and then my father went to China. And that was still during the Cultural Revolution. I was 3 or 4 years old, and they insisted on kind of teaching us a lot about Chinese culture, China, to have connection there, and then they brought us back in 1981. Again, that was still quite early before China really had that many other tourists. And so I've always had a very strong connection to China, and my brothers did some martial arts when they were young, but my father never really pushed it with them. They found their own interests and passions that were, more American in that sense, like football, American football, and piano, guitar, heavy metal. My oldest brother got into heavy metal. My older brother got into musical theater. My oldest brother really got into science fiction and science generally and biology. But, in a way, they had an aversion, almost an allergy to the things that I love. Qigong in particular. I think there was a period of time when Qigong became a bit like the charlatans of China, and there were a lot of people claiming all kinds of really outrageous things that Qigong could cure, and this is a fever that took hold of China in the 80s. And my parents also grew up as Chinese intellectuals, and there was also a strong aversion among many Chinese intellectuals of a certain age, and that continues, I would say, today, to China's feudal and superstitious past, in which many people may lump Qigong, maybe even Chinese medicine. That's starting to shift, I think, and interestingly, martial arts escaped that categorization, and in my parents' view, martial arts was associated with the martial virtue as well as the art, and it was seen as something that in ancient China was practiced by both scholars. All scholars would also practice a martial practice, wen wu, like culture and the martial would come together. So when I began studying internal martial arts, my mother was just so happy. By then, my father had passed away for many years, or he had passed away for a number of years already. But she just was so excited, and she kept joking with me that I'm like martial arts girl. And she just loved my shifu, and she did meet him. She got a really like beautiful sense from him. He's very practical and down to earth. And yeah, so how did my family shape my interests? I think they they gave me a foundation of Chinese culture as something to be inherently connected to, very proud of. They always wanted to be the bridges between the US and China and create friendship. And I see what I do now in a way as evolving and continuing that in my own sort of area of interest with healing practices and now martial arts. But yeah, I think what they did also, in part though, was a love of learning and an openness to always being humble in one's approach to learning, and to to my father at least would always acknowledge the difficulty in knowing what actually was happening, like the mystery of life. And he was a scientist, but he was also very Taoist in saying he actually believes everything is energy, and that it gets recycled as energy. And he had a love of trees, which he always would photograph, and he loved to visit old trees, and I definitely got that from him. I would just add one thing, though, which is interesting. You mentioned my use of the word medicine, and if I can loop back to that topic for a moment, when we think about medicine in a Western context, and I would also say in many modern Chinese medicine approaches to medicine, we think of it as remedial, as something that we take for a condition. And actually, medicine in the traditional understanding, the classical Chinese medicine's approach to medicine, is that herbs, if they're medicine, are best getting dust on them. When the doctors don't use the medicine, that's when the medicine is working best. The best doctors, their herbs have medicine, like in their have dust on the medicine. The best doctors have herbs that have dust in their cabinets, right? And that is because it's preventative and it's a way of life. And Qigong, internal martial arts, Chinese medicine, its primary orientation is actually to support our innate capacity for balance and homeostasis. And it's when we touch into that and we support our ability to be in balance, where there's the healthy flow through our meridian and organ systems, when the heart also then feels clearer and steady and calm through meditation, but also through lifestyle, movement, diet, then we respond to pathogens, we respond to sickness, we respond to injury in ways that really allow the body to heal itself.
Yeah.
Of course, if you break a leg, or of course, if you have other conditions that require Western medicine, use it. But medicine in Chinese classical understandings is not remedial. Its medicine is to help support the body's capacity for balance and homeostasis. And then from there, we heal ourselves in the same way that we cut our skin. And if we take care of it, clean it, leave it alone, make sure it's okay, it heals itself.
Yeah. And I think that that's another thing that I've so appreciated, is that so many of the practices are linked to the 5 elements. And people in general do have favorite seasons in the year. And I love the idea of 5 seasons, because I really notice how in August the days are getting shorter, but there's still plenty of sunshine, that earth balance time, like the late summer. I love it being called late summer because I don't feel as I'm slipping from summer into autumn. I've always struggled with winter, but I've found it a lot easier by understanding that in autumn the leaves fall from the trees, that nature lets go and releases, and that enables us to declutter, if you like, physically as well as mentally and emotionally. And it's made me feel more in tune with the seasons that I struggle with, finding that flow, because in winter the encouragement to move is less in general. We're not out in the garden so much. We're not doing those sort of things. So I think that's a beautiful part of it. And you encourage, sort of playfulness in the practices as well. The joy of the monkey in late summer, all of those, the tiger, all of those practices remind us of what we can learn about the children around us, and to, we all need those balanced elements in life, don't we?
Yeah. Play has evolved quite naturally for me. I think if I can point to a real sense of shift in the practices, it's just that on the whole I feel much lighter and happier, and that the playfulness is enjoyable. It comes because I enjoy it and I like it. I find that when I feel this way, I also learn easier. And that's not to say that I learn easily, because I actually feel like I'm a very, very slow learner. And when I am learning with my teachers, they always say, oh, I learn quickly, but I always feel like I'm a little bit stressed when I'm with them and I'm trying to get it right. And then I have to take it in, try to remember everything. I come back and then I sort of pick it apart, and then I find my play with it. I play with it more, and then I actually learn better. That said, when I'm with my my shifu and with my Tai Chi teacher, with my meditation teacher, I'll speak about my shifu, but the others come to mind as well. I knew he was my shifu because he had me laughing within the first few minutes of us meeting. Like, he just is a funny guy, right? And he takes everything very seriously but very lightly. And I find that really attractive in a teacher, in a guide. And I also know, from studying a lot of somatic work, that our nervous system is very difficult to change. Our nervous system has been recording responses since we were in utero, right? And then coming out, and just it's a recording device, and it gets familiar with, okay, this happens, and then I do this, and that works, right? So especially those very deep patterns and grooves of our neurological firings, those paths are deeply entrained. But the things that tend to most quickly shift our nervous system, and therefore our tendencies for reactivity or tightening up or feeling anxious, right? They're most easily changed through play.
Yes.
And creativity, right? Pulling us out of the conventional ways of being. So, I try to remind myself of that when I start getting a little bit uptight. It's like, oh, how can I be creative about this? How can I play a little bit with the experience, and instead of reinforce the existing programs in my body?
Yes. How do you feel that your practices have helped you through difficult times, challenging times?
Goodness.
It's a big one, I know. I was thinking in particular of losing your mum because you were very vocal about it happening, and it came across in your classes. It actually came out of your very being in your movement. So the processing of grief is so individual, and very often it's transformative too. It changes so much for us in our lives.
Yeah. I think the philosophical and orientations of heart for all of these practices are there to prepare us for difficulty. And they're also there to prepare us for the loneliness of dying and the acceptance of death. And I think in large part, I think it's natural that most of us don't want to think about death, don't want to acknowledge that it will happen to ourselves or to those we love. There's a lot of clinging to life. And, I've lost my mother about 2.5, almost 3 years ago now. But prior to that, I've lost, one of my best friends in London very unexpectedly. She had a heart condition, and she passed when she was in her 40s. Another student of mine, soon after that, a year later, passed. My sister-in-law has died. My father has died. My mother-in-law has died. My uncle-in-law. There's just so many people over the last 15 years who have passed. And so that process of simultaneously losing, right, having people in my life who I'm close to die, and then working with a lot of these practices that are orientating the heart towards, well, how do we meet this, has been a steep learning curve for me, but it's also been so useful and beneficial to explore loss and difficulty and grief as it's happening and as I'm inquiring into a lot of these practices. So I think the thing that I did recognize when my mother began to show signs of rapid decline, and it was gradual, I should say, gradual decline, and this was during the pandemic, which was a difficult time, just not being able to see her regularly and knowing that she was isolated like many people were. When I did finally get to see her and I recognized, like, oh, she is definitely not going to be around much longer, I thought carefully about what grief is and how when someone dies, it's one of the most kind of important things for me is the remembering of their life and the honoring of and respecting of who they have been, who they are, what they've done. And I decided to grieve my mother before she died.
Right.
And that was difficult, but it really helped me, and it helped me focus my relationship with her on the things that she can look back on and feel proud of, rather than the things that are really difficult for her in losing her mobility, losing her company, her community, her isolation, the physical discomforts. Like, we could go into that, or I could try to solve those things or problem solve with her, but that would just end up making her more frustrated. But instead, I chose to really focus on, Mom, you've lived an incredible life. Let's talk about that. Yeah. And she just would light up. And then if she started complaining about her situation, or like she's not doing anything of meaning or value, and, she's done so much of meaning and value, and I would say to her, Mom, you've done a whole lifetime of important work. Like, now is your time to just sit back and relax. Like, enjoy it. Let me take care of you, let others take care of you, and just tell me about the great things you've done. And often she would repeat the stories that I've heard a gazillion times, but I saw that was really helpful for her. And I also mustered the courage one day to tell her, I said, Mom, I don't know how long you're going to be here. You could live another 10 years or you could live another 10 days. But I want you to know that when you die, I will tell everyone what an amazing life you've had. Everyone will know. And usually my mom was like, oh, don't do that. Oh, that's silly. She would deflect it or deny compliments or things like that. And in that instance, I was sitting next to her. She was over here. And I said this to her. And I was like, I really want to say this. I managed to say it. And then she heard it and she lowered her head. She said, thank you.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
And you did that very thing as well.
And, the thing that I really walked away from, or that in retrospect, looking at my last few years with my mom and the decision to grieve her while she was alive, also meant putting down a lot of my my self-need, my importance or my needs. And I admit that it was easier for me to do that because I could come in and visit her for 10 days or 2 weeks, and then I could go back to my life. We weren't able to move there during the pandemic, and I made the decision that I would just try and visit her as often as I could. Now, if I lived there, it might have been much harder for me to do what I did, but she taught me so much. And what I realized is that after she died, I wasn't sad about her death as much. It wasn't the actual physical loss that shattered me, but what I was so impacted by and what I grieved was my teacher. She was a mirror to my growth.
Yes.
In the couple of years that I spent with her, I very conscientiously was working with my restlessness. For example, I move at a faster pace than she was moving. And I would catch myself when I go to visit her. I was like, well, I'm coming to visit her, but why am I running around? Why am I starting to get impatient with her pace, which is slower and slower? And why am I trying to work while I'm there or do other things and distract myself or get things done? Because she's just sitting there. So after that happened once, I went back the next time and I was like, right, I'm not going to schedule any teaching. I'm not going to even schedule any visits with friends. And I'm consciously going to slow myself down to her pace. And it was very hard, but I did it and I moved at her pace. I never rushed her. I was like, no, we can just take it slow. And it really was palpable, her shift. And my relinquishing of speed was something that I learned I could do, and it wasn't easy. And then, she was so sweet, but she would say, oh, well, my helper isn't going to be here, so maybe you can help me bathe. You can shower me. And I was like, I don't know if I can do that. I haven't seen my mother naked for God knows how long. And I was like, I'll just do this. I'm her daughter. And she had a very comfortable relationship with her naked body. And, I would stand behind her and shower her. And her back was so porcelain smooth, like a big boulder. Right? And I showered her, I bathed her. And then it was like, oh, I can set down my privacy, my intimacy, and my nervousness around that. I can do this with her and meet her there. And then another time she was like, oh, I go to bed at 8:00, but sometimes I lie there and, well, you could sleep with me. I was like, I don't know if I could sleep with you. When was the last time I slept with my mother? But again, she wanted it so badly and I could see it. And so I was like, okay, Mom, and I'll lie down with you. And she would get so excited. It was like what I realized, like she would turn to me and she like touch my face. She's like, "Oh, my little girl." Like she's like 80 and I'm almost 50, but she felt like a mother again.
Yeah.
And we would just chit chat. And she's like, "We can just lie here and chit chat." I'm like, "Great, let's just lie here and chit chat." And she would just start talking and I'd ask her questions and and I slept terribly for those 10 days. But I recognized that I could also relinquish my sense of need for space. So it's like she taught me all these things that I was capable of doing, and losing her was hard because I could see I was growing with her, right? And I was able to put down things that were challenging for me, relinquish my speed, my privacy, my intimacy, my space. And it really made her happy. Um, and yeah, those were the things I think that were hardest to no longer, I can feel myself a little emotional, hardest to no longer really um have that person holding up the mirror to me, and not even mirror, having that person meet me there. Like she was willing to meet me there. Right? And I lost a good friend.
That's very powerful. Very powerful.
Mm.
You seem to have an incredible capacity to transform your experiences into the written word. I remember one of the chapters, I think it was about listening in the
Xuyang. Yeah.
Shaolin. Okay, thank you. My Mandarin is not good.
Fine. It's a difficult one to pronounce.
Okay. Where you talked about as a child around a table with three brothers, everybody's interrupting everybody else because they wanted to get something across, so nobody was listening. And how you've then turned that around, that you've changed that experience into one of real listening, of proper listening, of waiting to hear the end of the sentence and let the comprehension come in. And I think that's what's so wonderful about your books. I have no idea, how long did it take you to write them?
So I wrote 2 books in 1 year, which I would never recommend to anyone to do if you have options, other options. The first book, Qigong and the Taiji Axis, I had a lot of that material from teaching over the years, and it was a matter of compiling it, and I had a very kind of clear outline, which made it really feasible to do. I don't think I could have just kind of winged it and written it without that. And then as I was editing the final versions of that book, I was also beginning to draft and write my second book. And thank you for the kind words about Xuyang. If I'm candid, I feel like I could write that book much better now. But that's always the case, right? And the book is kind of a place in time. And I just didn't have enough time for that book. And there were concepts that I wish I could have flushed out a little bit more, and given more space and time to. But there's always the possibility of something in the future, I suppose.
Are you thinking of writing again?
It's a good question. I have occasional moments of inspiration, and I also feel that I'm very deep into a somatic experiencing phase of learning, and it's something that is in me and translating, like digesting and metabolizing. And I don't want to jump into trying to put a lot of these experiences into language and words yet. But if these experiences become my muse at some point, then perhaps.
Well, I use, for all my classes, I use Qigong and the Tai Chi axis. It's an extremely well-thumbed book. in my library. And I love all the diagrams because even when I hadn't learnt something, being able to follow the diagrams and the instructions really, really was helpful. And then, of course, you did some YouTube videos during the pandemic. I just played them and played them and played. Just wonderful different practices, which are not all of them in the book. But I also loved at the end how you put together little, like the 18, the snake brigades, all of those practices at the end. I found those really, really supportive. Yeah.
I'm so glad to hear. Yeah, I recently narrated the audiobook version of Qigong and Taiji Axis, and it's coming out any day now. And it was a good exercise. I caught a lot of typos. I passed those on to my publisher. But the technician was really wonderful. He's done a lot of audiobooks before, and I was, noticing these little mistakes. He's like, "Oh, it's so normal. Yeah, it's part of the process." And then he's like, "How do you feel about reading it?" Because he wrote this 7 years ago. And it's like, I read some of this and I thought, "Oh, I wouldn't write that way again, or I would change how I worded that." But a lot of the other content, I was like, "Oh, I wrote that. That's nice." And on the whole, I also recognize that it reflects a certain time and space, and it belongs there. And all of us grow. I definitely feel like my approach and my practice has shifted and widened and deepened, but I think it's nice to hear that you use the book a lot and that it's a good resource.
It's on my website as one of my books I recommend for people to come to my classes, and I quite often take it to class, so it's there.
Thank you.
You offer trainings, videos, retreats, courses. You're on Sangha, Movement for Modern Life, Commune, Yoga and Fitness TV, and you teach, and you presumably walk your dog, and you have a family life and a creative life. How on earth do you fit it all in?
Oh, well, a lot of that has just gradually accumulated. The content, for example, that is available online, I would film something, and each year I'd have sort of a filming project, so it wouldn't all kind of lump together. And those filming, the filming of the content was often consolidated into like a week or two. And then I love having that available for people because then it's evergreen. Right? It's always there as resources, as people become interested in Qigong or wish to revisit things or deepen things. And it is accumulative. It's been accumulating for over 10 years. And I do teach online and I do teach retreats, and it feels full, but I have a lot of space in my life when I'm at home, and I'm quite a hermit in some ways. We live in the countryside. We've had a lot of family visiting for the last couple of years, but they also understand that I have kind of a quiet life, and my husband also enjoys that quietness, and I usually carve out my mornings from, until maybe 10 o'clock. And that's just time for me to do my practices.
Do your practices change a lot? I mean,
they have evolved. Yeah. Right now they're mostly, I sit, I do meditation. Sometimes I stand as my meditation, but that's usually 30, 40 minutes or longer. I don't use timers anymore. I just kind of sit or stand for a period of time. That's been very consistent for, gosh, over 22, 23 years.
my word.
And then I usually do some Qigong followed by my Bagua and Taiji practices now. don't do much yoga asana. That's sort of, it began shifting before the pandemic, and then with the pandemic, I've just realized it's not what I'm practicing. It's not where I'm evolving and growing. My body's also changing, so I don't do yoga asana. I haven't actually for probably 5-6 years much. And yeah, so right now I usually have about an hour and a half to 2 hours of different movement practices that I do. Flies by. I've got all kinds of forms I'm learning, and I love it. I really enjoy it, and it's hard for me to stop, and sometimes I really need to stop because I then later recognize that I've overdone it a little bit, and I'm, like, too sore. But it just really nourishes me and feeds me, and, then I walk my dog, or Aaron, my husband, walks our dog, and I do a few hours of admin work and other things, but, on the whole, it feels like I have quite a lot of space when I'm at home, and then when I go and teach retreats, that's it's a very kind of, again, consolidated period of a few days, one day, a few days, or a week, and so, that feels like, "Oh, that's quite full," but it feels like prior to that, I've had a lot of space and, nourishment and time, um, being quiet.
Yeah. Yeah, the value of being quiet is powerful too. What brings you the most joy, do you think?
The most joy, I think contentment is maybe orientation for me these days, and I think the spaciousness of when my heart feels connected to others, to myself. My dog and my cats and my husband bring me a lot of joy, and I feel very lucky to say my husband. Uh, but we have a really sweet relationship. It's taken a lot of investment and work as well. Um, the sunlight, the changing kind of seasonal patterns bring me joy. My niece and nephew, sorry, I have many nieces and nephews, but my youngest older brother has just had 2 children, and they are so cute, and I was there for both of their births, and we FaceTime regularly or WhatsApp video call, and it's just so much joy when she's, like, reaching for me on the phone, right, and it's very sweet. Um, yeah. Cooking, I liked, to spend time kind of preparing meals, and time with my martial arts family. I was just in Beijing recently. I have a deepening relationship with everyone, but my shifu and his daughter, Emma, have been coming to Stonesfield, every year, and having them live with us for a couple of weeks is really sweet. Like, they're just wonderful people to have here, and then when we go to Beijing, it really feels like family. And I think it's maybe hard for people without the cultural and maybe, uh, direct experience of being in a more formal lineage to maybe relate, but for myself, it's having a father of my generation and brothers and sisters in it, um, it is family, and, like, Aaron, my husband, has commented, like, my relationship with my shifu, he's like, "I see it, and it's very much like your relationship was with your father." Um, and, he's my best friend Robin, for example, in Beijing, she's still running yoga yard. She met him for the first time. They've known about each other for, like, 20 years, but she met him for the first time, and I said, "Oh, well, is my shifu, like, what is he like? And, you've heard about him for this many years, and is he like what you imagined?" And she said, "Yeah, but, it's his warmth that I was just really touched by his warmth." And so it just feels beautiful to have that, and, you know, seeing him with his daughter is 18, 19, and seeing them and their relationship, I'm like, oh my God, like he is a good father, beautiful father. Like they're buddies, he and his daughter. And they just have such a close and easy bond and relationship. And I think that's unusual, especially in China. Many fathers particularly are busy with work, and both parents work, and it's, one child policy for so many years. And it's like, Shifu, like, how did you have such a good relationship with your daughter? It's like, I have time.
Yeah,
I made time for her.
absolutely.
And I picked her up every day from school. I dropped her off every day. I would talk with her. And he's like, when I was young, I always wanted to ask so many questions to my parents, but they never wanted to talk to me. So I really wanted to make sure that, like, my daughter would talk to me.
Goodness.
And I would talk to her. Yeah.
Well,
Really sweet.
there's many a parent who probably doesn't have time to give their children, and we're all less as a result of it. I think it's beautiful.
Yeah.
to see.
Yeah. The fact, like, my Shifu is so interesting. He doesn't try to get a lot of students. He's never busy. He's like, if someone calls me and I say, oh, no, I'm busy. He's like, that means I'm like scrolling my phone or I'm taking a nap.
Yeah.
He's like, he doesn't want to be busy. And he's just, a very unusual person and a very humble but powerful kind of person to have. And I feel incredibly blessed to, to be studying with someone like that.
What a wonderful guide.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you'd like to say before we drop it?
Oh gosh, this has been such a lovely conversation, Kay. And
Loved it.
loved
it.
I feel really touched that you wanted to know a little bit about my mother and my relationship with her and my relationship to grief and these practices and how they've helped. But also just I feel touched that you invited me onto the podcast, and that what I try to share out is of value, or as it can be a resource. And I feel like that's what my teachers have often given to me, that I feel so like benefited from and appreciative of. So
You shared out as well. Yeah, I mean, that you definitely have. So, a big thank you for sharing your time and your wisdom today, listening to you speak about embodiment and the dance between playfulness and precision. And they're just such a reminder that these practices aren't just disciplines, are they? They're an invitation to live fully and gently as human beings, and very encouraging and warming.
yeah, I see them as like vehicles for embodying the philosophies, and the philosophies really are pointing to, how do our hearts feel more spacious and open and connected and free or balanced. Yeah.
It's a wonderful thing as well. I mean, all of your practices, I struggle the most with winter, but to turn the fear into wisdom, to transform that through the bear, just, transforming a negative emotion into a positive one. It's empowering and it's inspiring. And you continue to inspire not just me, but many, many other people I know. I've joined your meetings online, and there's like hundreds of people.
I'm always surprised. It's like, who are all these people who want to do Qigong? Okay.
From Reykjavik to Sao Paulo to India to all over. I know, it's amazing. But these modalities do help people to feel able to meet life with grace and humility, that lovely word, and kindness and presence. I just want to thank you for your generosity, your insight, and for embodying all you teach, always with a light touch, because there's always a smile on your face and there's always a beautiful sense of humour and a little bit of a twinkle in your eye as you share. I'd like to...
I'll credit that one to my mom. She always had a smile, even when things were rough. Yeah.
Well, it's a gift.
Thank you.
No, thank you so much, Mimi, and thank you to everyone who has been listening. May we each carry a little of this grounded, compassionate awareness into our day and into the beautiful, messy and unpredictable rhythm of being human. Thank you for sharing this quiet space with me. I hope it brought you a sense of peace and presence. If you feel moved to, I'd love to hear how it landed for you. Your thoughts and feedback really help me shape future sessions with care. You're welcome to subscribe and share this with anyone who might find it helpful. And if you'd like to be a guest on the podcast or simply connect, I'd love to hear from you. Until we meet again, go gently.